In 1974, the first tabletop role-playing game was created. Since then, people from all around have gathered to play. Join me as we talk with RPG enthusiasts while they share their best, worst, and favorite moments. This is You Had to Be There. Hey everyone, welcome to You Had to Be There, a D&D storytelling podcast. If you're first time joining us, we get together and we talk fun tabletop role-playing game stories and knowledge, and we learn a lot of fun stuff and laugh a lot. I'm your host, Tom DeSillis. I'm also a stand-up comedian, so you can find where to find me there in most of my descriptions. And I always just like to let people know that if you come across this show and you're like, wow, I have amazing tabletop role-playing game stories, well, you can hit me up. Actually, Twitter's been also working pretty well for me. T DeSillis Comedy on Twitter, or you can email me at youhadtobethere@gmail.com. But I like to get pretty much right to it. So my guest today is part of the Party of Two RPG on Twitch, Hayley Bell. What's going on?
Hi.
I said that right? Hayley, right? You just slap a Y in there because you're cool like that.
Yeah, I'm just Hayley, you know. I don't have a last name. It's like Cher or Zendaya.
That's fine.
Yeah, you got it right. It's Hayley.
All right. I did the bell based off your Twitter. I probably should have asked if that was correct. I know that people just kind of throw stuff out there, but I figured Twitter's the best way.
I don't understand all that because I didn't realize how you can get to know people and not know their names.
Oh yeah.
So when I was younger, I was always hear about how I've been friends with this person for 10 years and I've never met them and I don't know their first name. I'm like, how the hell do you do that? Now I know.
Yeah, I think and I'm like, you know, I'm 31, so I grew up starting in that age of things where you'd go into a random chat room and just be talking to someone for hours and I don't even know who you are, where you are.
Person is. Yeah.
You know, I had the mental capacity to never meet with people in person without that weirdness, but that's where we're at right now.
Pretty much.
But yeah, going back, I mean, it kind of all goes together, you know, chat rooms and RPGs and stuff. I think I never actually when I was younger, I didn't do RPGs tabletop, but there were those chat room RPGs where you would I don't know if you ever did any of that, where you would make a character. I never
did any of them, but I knew about them.
Yeah.
So I thought they were really, really cool, but I was kind of scared of going into that world. I don't know why. I was just really apprehensive with all of that kind of stuff. I think my parents terrified me when it came to online stuff.
Yeah, I think
at the beginning. I'm just a couple of years older than you, so I was kind of in that same place too.
Yeah, I was the MO of you don't know who you're gonna meet online, and now it's way worse, which is funny.
Now you're
you were worried about us,
No, yeah. My children will never have phones that can connect to the internet, and they will always be on a computer where everyone can see.
It's so hard. I can't even imagine. So it's safe to assume you've probably been playing tabletop role-playing games for a while?
No, actually,
cool.
We're kind of newbies. So we started playing Pathfinder in 2020 during the pandemic. Okay. So my husband calls us pandemic players. So we started playing because our children, we have 3 little boys, 9, 6, and 5.
Okay.
And, or 4, he turns 5 in a couple months. And they were driving us so crazy that we were ready to just ship them off, COVID or no COVID, and just be get out of our lives. So we had to find something to occupy them.
Right.
And my husband had played D&D on his service mission in Costa Rica when he was younger. So he's like, well, let's play with the kids, and just it's telling a story and it's creating characters, whatever. And I wasn't all that interested. I was kind of whatever.
Uh-huh.
So they played for a little bit, and then my 9-year-old was like, Mom, I want you to play with us. Come play with us. So I played, and I kind of was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a writer. I had been a writer when I was younger and was a fictional novelist. And so I was like, I really like this idea of creating my world and then dropping people in it and letting them figure out how to live in it.
Right.
So my husband kind of fully engaged me into Pathfinder because we couldn't find D&D books because they were so expensive.
Right.
So we found Pathfinder first edition books online, and they were very, very cheap. Somebody was selling them for like $20, and it was like the core rulebook, the DM guide, or the GM guide, and the player's handbook for like $20, which was pretty good. So we started playing Pathfinder, and I caught the vision probably the second session that we had, and I was like, it was done from there. I was so in love with the idea of creating a character, and I could pull on my theater background and my writing background and just be able to immerse in this world. And I love doing accents. And so like it fed so many parts of my little soul that needed to be fed during COVID. So that's kind of, so we've only been playing since 2020, September of 2020.
So on par with your husband. So I refer to us as quarantine D&D babies, or like, that's my phrase. Cause I also, much like you, I always wanted to play, and I was didn't get around to it. And then the pandemic hit. I couldn't do comedy. So I just was like, let me try this. My buddies play all the time. So I got into it. And then, like you said, it hits those like buttons of like ultimate creativity. And the only thing that gets me sometimes is I'll like, when a campaign, like the thing ends, I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But like, you can't think. I try not to like think too far in advance.
Don't think into the future. No. Yeah,
because you don't know. You're like, you come up with a plan all week, and then next thing you know, 2 minutes into the session, it goes awry. But
it all goes to hell pretty much. I saw this meme once. It was like the number of things that can destroy a DM's plan, and the next image was the party. It was like 2 minutes into the session. I'm like, yes, exactly. The party will destroy your plans. Well, and Weston and I play really interestingly because it's just the two of us, party of two. That's our show.
I did want to talk about that. So I wanted you to definitely get into that, because your whole format, and I've listened to a few of your table talks, and I did tune in. It's a little hard because it was like mid-campaign, but I tuned in to one of your episodes in which I can attest that like right away you switched to an accent. I was like, oh, she's got the accents pretty good. I was impressed because I try and butcher accents every time I make a new character, but
I love British accents and like Southern accents. Those two are my go-tos always. So
I end up Scottish for some reason. I don't know why.
I think it's because it's the easiest one to make fun of.
I think like, so. Which makes it kind of feel bad. I kind of feel bad now.
No, but like if you think about all the different British accents, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just one of those really weird people that analyzes British accents, but like there's so many of them, and they're all so different that the normal accent that we think of as like British accent for Americans is a very highbrow Northern England accent versus there's like 75 different accents in that teeny little island.
So I'm a big Doctor Who fan, so I do hear like the different dialects, but I've heard like people will joke and they'll post a video of like someone from like, I guess what would be considered like rural England, and you're like, this is not even a language. This is completely like you can't understand what they're saying, but then people who live there know.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
They totally understand.
But they almost have like a southern drawl sometimes.
They do.
Like, holy moly! It's like. Yeah,
it's insane, but yeah, I love doing accents. So like that's a huge thing. So my husband,
go ahead.
He does. My husband has a hard time with it, and when we switched off, I introduced a character. So we switch off DMing. I'm sorry, I'm probably jumping all of your points. So just tell me to shut up and be like, hey, this is that.
This is a very organic. I try to keep it very organic. We're here. I don't have segments. If we get to a point and I have a question, I'll get to it. But go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the way that we do it is that we both wanted to play and we both wanted to DM. So we decided to switch off DMing. So my husband started the campaign, and it was his story for the first, we call it the story arc. But it was the first like 10 or 11 episodes or sessions of the show. And then we switched and I became the DM. So we continued the same characters, the same storyline, moving on, but I grew it organically the way that I wanted to. So I was creating my own bad guys, and his character was much more politically oriented. He had really, really high diplomacy and charisma. And his backstory was that he was a spy for a underground railroad type organization that would get slaves out of a Nazi Germany type country called Cheliax. So he had this, like, my character was a fighter, and so it was like all super action oriented, and then it flipped to my turn and we went into a totally different mode of doing like subterfuge and trying to figure out the political machinations of the country and the queen and their court and stuff. So
when you say you switch, I can't remember that. So like I watched one episode and you're playing a fighter, I believe, right?
Yeah, her name is Anna. She's a tiefling fighter paladin.
That's right.
We're dual classed, and in Pathfinder you can do that.
Yeah, you can do it in other systems, but I think Pathfinder is easier to do that.
It's really intense. It's like 2 full class. The number of feats.
To a ton of Pathfinder people, and I will eventually, as my brother-in-law is a big fan of like Pathfinder, and he has Starfinder that we're gonna play eventually. But,
Starfinder! They just came out with a brand new book for Starfinder, and it's adding magic into the system, which is so cool. Anyway, sorry, we talked about that on Monday.
No, it's fine. So when you guys switch, then does Weston take over your character, or does he have a different character's? Like, how does that work?
So we do not do the GMPC. We don't. That is, it's just impossible. Not everyone, but a lot of people say, well, I can do that. We figured out a way to do the GMPC. It doesn't freaking work. If you're the GM, you have all of the information, and it's incredibly difficult to separate your character from yourself. So the way that we set it up is that Weston's character, he did run his character, whose name is Az, through his first story arc, but he was a secondary character, so he made no decisions.
Right.
He didn't add anything to the like actual conflict other than setting up scenarios for my character then to like figure out how to handle. And so the same thing happened when we flipped. So my character became basically an NPC, and she was the tag along in a lot of ways. She was kind of like the not hired hand, because she wasn't a hired hand, but she was there and interacted with the storyline. But all of the decisions were made by Weston's character. And there were times where he would ask my character for advice on things, and I would sometimes tell him the wrong stuff.
Right.
So like he was never totally I never wanted it to create a position where it was like, well, Hayley said this, so it must be true because she's the DM.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, maybe not. I'm like, my character's a 19-year-old and she wouldn't know whether or not that's a good idea.
No, that's I think that's the right move, because like when I've run a couple games, I don't DM regularly, but I'll run like a one shot, and like if I've learned from other DMs too that I've just played with, it's like, all right, if the party's underpowered, you create an NPC, because just that won't affect the story, but just so they don't die. That's like just, or to keep it close. Normally and it's kind of fun to do that, especially yours is a little different because like these characters are NPCs temporarily, and like then they go back to being a PC. But when you roll up an NPC, you're like, oh, I could totally kill this NPC if I wanted to, so you can play real reckless with them.
For sure. And we have I have NPCs in our campaign that 100% were fodder. We're like totally fine if the person died, if they didn't, no big deal. Weston has a couple of characters, NPCs that we're playing with right now that are a part of our little dungeon crawl party. We're trying to get to these hags who are stealing the souls of the individuals on the above ground area. So we're deep in the sewers and whatnot, but they're 100% there for buffer for us to die. Because I told him, you will not kill my character. I know I will not roll anyone.
I like the format too, because like you're saying, like different story arcs kind of, and it allows people. And then do you just release it on Twitch? Is it just you do the live stream and then it's gone, or do you release it?
Well, we have it on YouTube, so you can watch the entire show if you wanted to from the beginning. I will say we learned a lot in the first couple of months of doing the show. Like kind of the audio, because I have a history in podcasting, the audio was always a stickler for me, and there were certain things we just could not figure out, because doing things live is very different than recording a podcast. Like, as you know, like you can go back through and edit things and it's not a big deal, but if it's live and there's distortion, you can't re-record it. So that first little bit, we learned a lot about how to do it, but the story was always so much fun. And my husband husband created such a beautiful story for me to play in at the beginning that I felt a lot of anxiety when I took over as the GM, because I was like, I need to make it as cool as you made it for me. And I think the best compliment we ever got was that it was like listening to a really good book. And so people
that's like literally what you're supposed to. That's like what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's like what you're supposed to do. But yeah, games. So it's on YouTube. It's also a podcast. But I'm really bad at updating the podcast.
Yeah, it's tough. But it's funny because we really are in the same. You had a vast more experience when it comes to podcasting than I did. I went to Google and I was like, I want to do this. I want to make sure it doesn't sound like shit. And it still sometimes sounds like shit, but I'm getting there, but
you learn every single time you do it. I did podcasting I've been doing it since 2018. Okay. So I was kind of thrown into it actually, but like Google, I call it YouTube University, because like you can learn anything through YouTube. And so I would just, if something was wrong, I would go to YouTube and be like, okay, why is this happening? And I think YouTube is the greatest resource. And if you're a brand new DM, like bringing this background to D&D, but like you can learn everything on YouTube. It's incredible. And some of the best DMs in the entire world have YouTube channels, except for Matt Mercer, because he has his own thing going on right now. So
there's some old ones on the Geek and Sundry page.
Yeah, the handbooker helper.
There's and just DM tips. There's a DM tip. Yeah, he's done it.
I forgot about those.
But yeah, no, it's 100% true. Like everything, I'm a really bad I think also the reason why I love what I really loved about getting into these games is I love medieval like movies and TV shows, and I bet I always would have loved reading those books, but I'm very bad at reading. My mind wanders when I read. I'm just not a strong reader. So like when I was like, oh, I can listen because I'm a listener and I'm a watcher. So I'm like, I can listen and watch and be a part of the story. Like, get out of here. I'm in. Like, it's. I
know, right? So you can affect what's happening. Yeah. I think that's the coolest thing is like if you're listening, because I listened to a lot of stuff until I was older. So like I was kind of in that same place. I had ADHD undiagnosed when I was a kid, and so I couldn't sit down and focus to read a book, but I would listen. So I would play with Legos or cross stitch or whatever to keep my hands occupied. But I would listen to audiobooks, and it was always fantasy. And then it became urban fantasy. You've got a little fidget
boy. Yeah.
I have a full set of dice that I play with at my computer desk. But
even in the middle of a meeting, like that 20.
Sorry. No, and I just got a brand new set of dice too, so I've been playing with them all day today. I just was sitting there. I got like 3 nat 20s in like 5 minutes as I was just rolling. I was like, you have to break in your dice so that they get you.
Everyone has a different idea. Everyone has different methods.
No, I'm not that bad, but I don't have like stuff with dice. I love my dice, but I will every once in a while. If one has given me a lot of bad rolls, I will get rid of it.
Yeah, I'll give it a rest sometimes, but
yeah.
But yeah, so then all right, so you were only playing. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, being able to affect the story. So it's like you're listening to these audiobooks and you're putting yourself in that world and you're seeing it, but you can't change it. So the main character does something and you're like, you're stupid as hell. Yeah. Why did you do that? But like when you're playing, you're in that same stereo and you're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. You're in trouble now.
Yeah. It changes everything. I love being able to be part of the story. Cause I'm also like, I was also that type of person where like, I think the reason why I never got into sports is I wasn't very good at them, like playing them. And I'm not I do like to watch like movies and stuff, but when it comes to things like an activity, I like to do it. Like I would rather, even though I'm bad at basketball, I would much rather play a game of basketball than watch a game of basketball. I get you. So being able to be part of it. But when you were only playing for a short period of time, and then you were like, we're doing this. We're gonna make a show out of this, and you came up with the format. When did you and everything's homebrewed? I'm guessing because all these different story arcs.
No, actually. Okay. So this first campaign is fully in the world of Golarion that was created by Paizo for Pathfinder. Okay. So awesome. It's all their gods, all of their places. And the one thing that we did do that was very different is it's a homebrewed story, but we took adventure paths from previous games, like not previous adventure paths, but adventure paths that already existed. So modules right. in the world of Golarion for Paizo, and we included them in the lore of what we were doing. So things that had happened in, say, an adventure path called Hell's Rebels, it happened in the same place that we are currently in Cantargo. And so we included things and lore and stuff that had happened from those in our show. So that was it's something that not really many people did. And we got a lot of feedback from people like, oh my gosh, like you actually included all of this stuff. And like, that's one of the characters from Hell's Rebels. And that's one of the characters from the Knights of whatever. Like people were really surprised when we were bringing in all of this lore from the world to create our own little thing. But our next campaign that we're getting ready for, we're going to be finishing up this campaign probably in the next 5 or 6 months, just to give Weston some time, because he's actually building a whole brand new world for us. That's based off of gamifying mental health, kind of.
Is this one still going to be Pathfinder too? Oh.
Kind of. It's kind of. We're doing D&D 3.5 and Pathfinder 1. So we're combining the two of them. So we're going to be just taking the best of both worlds. So that honestly, the reason that we made the decision is because Pathfinder does not have as big of an audience as D&D does.
Apparently that's what happened with like Critical Role and stuff. So it's unfortunate. Yeah. I've had a couple people from Pathfinder who worked there on when they talked about like when they unionize their workers and stuff, and they're all great people. So it's unfortunate how D&D is. It has the brand recognition, which was really frustrating because I actually prefer Pathfinder. I think I've played D&D. I've done full I don't know if that's full, but like 8-9 session campaigns in D&D. Like I've been a guest on a lot of different shows that are D&D, and I prefer Pathfinder. There are Pathfinder 2nd edition, but we're gonna have to rethink everything to gear it towards Pathfinder 1st edition. But the world that Weston is creating is absolutely incredible. It's based on the idea of chaos and order, and a lot of issues of mental health that we're going to be addressing are things that like I've struggled with, like pretty severe depression and anxiety. And he and I are combined as like writers together. We're creating this world that has things like miasmas, which is a representation of like depression, where you wake up and it's the roll of the dice and you decide like you have no control over how you're going to feel that day. You can do things to help fix it, but like if you wake up and the world has gone to shit and you feel like shit, there's not a lot you can do about it. So it's been a very interesting place because there's been some negative feedback. People are like, you shouldn't be gamifying mental health issues. And I'm like, but it's the reality of the way that you feel. Right. And what would be even better than taking the way that you feel when you have an anxiety attack and making it a monster that you can slay. I don't think there's any. I mean, first of all, it's your game. Do what I want. You do what you want. It's the best part about these games when anytime someone's like, I don't think you should be doing that. Okay, well, don't watch it. Don't play it. Like, it's not your game. Yep. Whatever. I mean, I'm sure there are lines that can be crossed where you're like, okay, you definitely shouldn't do that. But I mean, these games tug on your heartstrings. They tug on your emotions and your feelings. These games do that. It's one of the few types of like games that can really do that. And I think like, I don't know, I played a Call of Cthulhu one shot, and you go through emotional and trauma and all this stuff. And the whole point of that is to build a character that has had trauma, so that way the game can play off of it. And I think that like there's no wrong way to fight demons. No. And internal demons are still demons, and also it might make you feel better.
Well, and that was the thing is like
I would love to crit on my emotional anxiety. I
know,
to.
right?
Like, take
and
it
that's
down.
kind of the way we're doing this and we're building this, because we have found such catharsis in playing and being able to be. I mean, we're very unique in the fact that we're a husband and wife duo and we're playing together. There's ultimate trust, ultimate vulnerability. I can be as vulnerable as I want. My husband can be vulnerable at the table. Like I've gotten him to cry. I've set up scenarios where he got really emotional.
Listen, what you said to your husband behind closed doors is not my business, okay?
But like the vulnerability that we have at our table is very unique. Most people wouldn't be able to play the game that we're building, because to be that vulnerable on the table is very scary. But I'm a performer. I've been very open with my life and my life experience. So being able to be vulnerable at the table with a camera on is not difficult.
Perfect. No, it's good. And like sometimes I think this whole world of these games kind of attracts certain types of people for sure. I mean, I think everyone should try it, and I think it's fun. I think even if someone's a little more rigid, like they still can have fun. But like I think it really appeals to certain types of people.
Emotional people.
So when you what was your character's name again? One more time. Anna. So when you were making your character was this your first character you made, or you made one other one before in your home games before you were streaming?
Yeah. So for our home game, I created a very different, very different character from who Anna is. And she ended up becoming my one-shot character. So like anytime I do a one shot, she's the one that I pull out. I'll re-roll stats for her and stuff like that. But this is her, but her name was Izzy, where Anna is very protective yet kind of stoic because of her background. She was kind of kidnapped as a kid and forced into learning how to fight and be a warrior. Izzy is very different in the fact that she chose to fight, went against her family's wishes, but I like the Southern accent. So she has a very deep Southern drawl, and she is 5'2", and she has a war hammer or a great sword, depending on what game I'm playing. And it's her size. So like when she holds it, it's like, looks like she's tipping over, but she's always a barbarian. So it's like, okay, gotcha. She rages, she picks up the sword, and it's all good.
That's what I was, so she's a barbarian. So then you have a barbarian and then fighter. So are you more of a up close and personal kind of?
Yeah, I'm a martial fighter.
You're a martial fighter.
I love being able to get up there and slash people's heads off. And like, if you ever watch the show, whenever I do that, or if I crit, I'm always like giddy as a schoolgirl. I'm so excited about
Pop it off.
Yeah. But also like when you're new to the game, to any TTRPG, playing a martial class is much easier than playing a magic or a magic wielding class. So like my husband always plays a sorcerer or a mage of some type. And I got my first taste into doing that when I played a Wheel of Time campaign where I was an Aes Sedai. So if you've seen the Wheel of Time show on Amazon, or if you know the books, the Wheel of Time at all, they're magic users that have the access to the source and whatnot. So she was a sorcerer, and I was terrified. I had such anxiety playing that character, especially because it was live. I was on another channel, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, it was really scary for me, but it ended up being a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. But I still feel the most comfortable playing martial class and getting up close and personal.
My first was a half caster. I was a ranger, and then
nice.
I kind of like both, but I'm all over the place. I can't make. I thought I was like, oh, these spells, but like I like how weird you can get with them. But
it's super fun. It's super fun how weird you can be.
What do you remember like a crazy moment where you're like did you try to rush in right away to battle, and then you're like, wait a second, how many hit points do I have? What's my armor class? Oh my gosh. I'm raging, right? No, you have a spell book in your hand. Like, so you were a sorcerer. So yeah, so like, what was that?
Kind of.
Did you have any like moments?
Well, there's one. So this was the very beginning of this campaign, and for every Aes Sedai, for every sorcerer, there is a warder, a companion that is the shield essentially for them. So they're supposed to stay back and they're do the spell work and whatnot, and then the warder is supposed to go forward and attack. Well, Weston, my husband, was playing the warder, and like we were supposed to be working in tandem, but I was like, no, I want to go do something else. So I took off and I left him we were in a 2-story building, and I left him on the first story to go up to the second story, because my thought was like, okay, I'll get high vantage point, I'll be able to get the bad guys, it'll be all good. Little did I know that there were like bad guys like in the hallway like about to come get us. So he's on the first floor. I'm making my way up to the second floor. There are bad guys hanging out everywhere. And he looks at me midstream. He's like, what the hell are you doing? You are supposed to stay by me. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Because I'm so used to just like taking off and like going and doing my own thing. Because as a martial class, you're fine. Like, whatever, I've got 150 hit points. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, fine is loose term. But yeah, no, definitely more fine, and especially if the whole build is around having your damage your damage taker never split
don't split the party, don't split the couple that is supposed to stay together. No, we learned by the end, like we figured out the synergy really well, but those first couple of sessions, I'm sure my DM was like, what, you are an idiot. Like, and the whole campaign was wrapped around my character, so it was like, your character can't die, you've got to stop it. Anyway.
No, it gets scary. I mean, it does get scary when you're like, you play that squishy character. I like can't.
Yeah.
I know the scaling is different, but I have like a very hard time looking at a character sheet and like when the AC is like too low. Like I know Pathfinder, it's like 800 or something, but like
no, the AC definitely, like my AC, like she's a level 8, she's about to level up to 9. Her AC is 28 right now.
Yeah, see, like when I watched her stream for a little bit, and then like you got into the combat, and I was like, wait, 27 AC is the enemy or something, which is like, I know it's scale, it's all relevant in scales, but like it's funny to hear. But for D&D purposes,
scary.
If my character has anything less than a 16, I'm like, I can't play this character. It's ridiculous. Like I get so scared, and then I forget, like, no, if you're a sorcerer, you're supposed to, or a wizard, like you're supposed to. That's why I tend to
hang back.
I tend to build weird ones so it works with it, but.
Yeah, well, it's like I didn't understand why Liam O'Brien in Critical Role. It's like I assume everybody watches Critical Role, but have you seen Critical Role?
Yeah, I have, but you're right that you shouldn't assume everyone watches it, because not everyone does.
Not everybody watches it. I know, it's so bad. I binge watched it. I was obsessed for about 9 months. I watched all of campaign 1 and 2.
Oh, 1 and 2. We had almost the exact same 2020. Because we both got into Dungeons and Dragons, decided we had to do a podcast, and binge watch Critical Role. And that's what you do when you don't have to work for
seriously, and you're just like, I have
watch this, But anyway,
this thing. No, but so in campaign 2, Liam O'Brien played a sorcerer. Well, a wizard, and he would always like jump out and cast a spell and then jump back into little hidey holes. And I was like, what the hell? Like, why is he not actually doing anything? Because I was so close. I was so used to Vax in campaign 1, where he was like all up in personal and getting into everybody's business. And then I played a sorcerer for the first time and realized the little amount of hit points, especially in D&D versus Pathfinder, that I'm like, oh my goodness. Because I have like 100 and something hit points right now in Pathfinder for my level 8 character. And the fact that in D&D they'd still not have hit that high, I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be an adjustment.
I also, though, like, honestly, it is scary, but I also, like, I've played the tank, and it can be a little scary too. If you're the tank and everyone else in the party is squishy, and you're like, I have 8 enemies around me right now, and a few bad rolls, and next thing you know, you're like,
so quickly. Yeah. So quickly you can go from being like, oh no, I'm totally fine, to like, I have 4 hit points left. Somebody needs to heal me. And that was one of the reasons why with Weston, if anybody wants to play a one-on-one game or a 2-player game, the best thing to do is, as you're building your characters, is to make sure that any holes that your character has, that your partner fills, which is why we decided to do dual class with Pathfinder, because it's literally 2 full classes. It's not like Gestalt in D&D where it's like you kind of pick and choose, and it's literally 2 full classes. That is cool, so I'm a fighter and a paladin, or in Pathfinder they call it a champion. Right. So I have the ability to heal, but I also have all of the martial feats as well, where I can like do power attack and do extra fun things with my swords and whatnot. But my husband, Weston, did a cleric and a sorcerer so that he could do the offensive spells as a sorcerer, but then the healing spells as a cleric as well. Yeah. So we filled the party up that way so that we're just 2 people, but we have the skills and abilities of 4.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It definitely is smart to not go in there with like 2 barbarians and you're like, we got this. No, it's not gonna, you'll survive for a while.
That would be hilarious.
It's fun, like for one shots. I feel like to just be like, screw it, just go in.
For sure. I did a one shot where there were 2 bards, and my counterpart, she played it way different than I did. I was very much like, I hung back the whole time, and every spell that I cast was for like hurting the bad guy, but not doing HP damage, but like keeping him in place. So kind of like hold person, or there was one spell that literally brought ghost chains and kept them in place and things like that. But she played hers offensively. So she was right up there with her stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh.
The whole thing with bards is like the versatility, which is fun. I've played a couple. Sometimes some ones I like, some I don't. But have you had a character that... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, do you buy into the whole horny bard thing?
I think that any character can be horny. My bards, my first one, it's like a long convoluted story, but essentially my first one, I was going to start out being horny, and then he ended up just falling in love anyway and being all like romantic and stuff. But the other bard I play, ironically, is his father that he doesn't know is actually his father, is a horny scumbag bard through and through. He is a dirtbag. It's a long...
It's kind of fun to play those characters though. They're like different than you are. I mean, I'm assuming you're not a dirtbag.
No,
I could be wrong.
It's funny to no.
It's fun to play those characters. That's why I always love playing villains. And my experience in theater, I did musical theater for years and years, and then I did opera. You take musical theater, you put that into opera, and it just explodes the emotion and the whatever. And my favorite character in all of opera, her name is Tosca, and she is this simpering, sweet little thing, but she kind of comes into her own a little bit, and she ends up, this guy that is like a would-be rapist, she stabs him to death.
Okay.
At the end of Act 2. And so she kind of becomes like this villain. And I just like, it's so juicy and so wonderful. And playing like Lady Macbeth, who goes totally crazy, but like kills a bunch of people. And depending on which version of the show you're watching and whatnot, it's like, they're the funnest characters to play, that emotionally and mentally unhinged, because you're not that way in your own life. So it's like, it's almost cathartic to play those characters.
It gets a little dangerous though, because like if you're the good, like the voice of reason in the party, and then you end up with a party full of, scumbags,
crazies,
then it gets weird.
No, I agree with that. I was actually a problem that I had with the second campaign of Critical Roles. I just felt like they all just evolved into
It's part of the reason why, like, this is the same campaign where I switched my bard, and I just ironically made it his father, but like because it was just too difficult. I was like, they're not this party is like, he's not like, it's so hard to role play because they're just all super neutral and go,
Well, and that doesn't make any, I don't know how you feel about alignments.
It worked with the story. No, it's not. That's
good.
We're not tied to alignments. It's just the characters they made. It was like a sociopath, a psychopath, and a lunatic, and like just trying desperately. but it works with the story. He's only temporarily removed from the story while things like ensue. But I was like, it was more for me. I was like, I just can't. It's so stressful to try and like role play with this party, because it was just like too hard. And I feel like if he wasn't taken from the party, he would have left, because he's like, this is ridiculous. I can't be with you guys. You guys are lunatics.
Yeah, I can't do it anymore.
Have you had any characters like die yet in any of your games? I know you. It's crazy because you are like I guess at this point, most of your time playing these games is live. Is that true? Or
all
do you still
of my time playing these games are live. I don't ever play off camera anymore, just because I don't have time. Like I get to my own horn for a second. No, but I get invited to, like, it's such a blessing because I've become connected with some really incredible people within the community who just do stuff all the time. Yeah. So they're always looking for people to fill spots. And so I'm like, yeah, sure. Just like, do you want to do a charity stream? Heck yes, let's do it. Yeah. It's like, cool. So pretty much everything I do is online now. But I did have a character almost die. Okay. If it counts. So Weston, and this was in our current campaign. So Weston had set up a scenario where my character had killed someone who had tried to rob us, and she kind of went a little berserk and killed them all because it was a very emotional moment. We had just gotten out of somewhere and these bad guys showed up, and she went a little bit crazy. Well, that came back to bite her in the ass, and they were attacked. Myself and Az were both attacked in this tavern, and I'm watching the HP go down. And I have a dog. I have a dog in my campaign. His name is Bruce. He's a Cane Corso, huge, gorgeous black dog. Not that this is my dream dog or anything like that. But he's fighting, and I'm watching his HP go down. And
the dog's HP go down.
The dog's HP go down. Okay. And then as his HP starts going down, and then mine is like, I'm not doing so well. And I'm watching this whole thing, and I'm looking at Weston from across the table. I'm like, are you going to do a TPK? Are you serious right now? Are you serious? Like, I was genuinely pissed. And then my dog hit 0 hit points. And I'm like, Weston, how do you kill my dog? Like, I was so mad. And he was like, he's not dead. He's just knocked out. He's unconscious. He's not dead yet. And I'm just like, you freaking son of a. And then the next round, Weston's character Az gets knocked out. Oh. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, I was genuinely pissed. And I had a plan. I was like, okay, so what I'm gonna do, my dog is magical, so if he dies, it's fine. He'll go into the ether, and then in a week he'll come back. Like, it's not a big deal. But then I'm trying to figure out, okay, so I can grab Az and go out through the window. But before I could do any of that, Weston full on takes my character out. And that was the end of the session. And I was like, I'm going to freaking kill.
So he knocked your dog unconscious. His character got knocked unconscious, and then you get knocked unconscious, and then you end the stream?
The session ended. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, I hate you so much right now. And he's like, I hate him too. Don't freak. Just like, he's like, just calm down. Next session, we're going to find out what happens, whatever. And I was so emotional about it though,
because which means you had to be in the house with him for a week.
And I was like, you're going to sleep on the couch. And he's like, I'm not sleeping on the couch. That's not going to happen. I'm like, you're going to sleep on the couch. I'm going to lock the door. But that's the closest that we've come to this point. But apparently the next session,
having a character die and almost getting a divorce, I guess.
Yeah, I actually think that I said during the stream, you guys are watching a couple devolve into divorce right now.
I was like the first big, my wife and I were in like a group chat, and we were talking about like our favorite cheese flavored cracker, and I was like, oh, Cheez-Its, and she was like, goldfish, and I was just like, you're all about to watch us get in our first fight right now. It was super big things, but
that was really intense. The crazy part though was the next...
on your husband to pull that move. I will tell you.
I know. Well, I've pulled some pretty intense things on him too. Like, his character.
We're coming. We got about like.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I could talk for 3 hours. I don't think people want to hear me. I don't think we're there yet. If I become huge and people want to hear me talk about D&D for 3 hours, I will do it.
Yes.
But I try to keep
my
it
camera
around
just
an hour,
went weird.
So,
There we go.
Tell me some of the squirrely business you've done in your game.
So I love using characters' backstories against them.
As a good DM should.
So one of my favorite things to take something that was really traumatizing to them in their backstory and then bring it back around. And so this instance, Weston created this character where he is an Azamar or Azamir, however you pronounce it. And in the world where we set this, or not the world, the country that we set this, that was like really bad, because literally the soul of the country was sold to Asmodeus, to the devil. And he was born into nobility. And so an angelic child being born into the nobility sold to the devil is kind of a bad thing. So he was sold into slavery as an infant, and that was his whole backstory. And he had been used as a guinea pig test subject because he had angelic blood, and they were doing all of these science experiments anyway. So we get out of that place. It's my turn to DM now. There's a lot of political intrigue going on. There's like lots of back and forth. They're not really sure. The party's not really sure who to trust. And they get taken to this tavern that's called Angel's Haven. Mm-hmm. And it was a little bit of a foreshadow. And I wondered if Weston got it. And he said he wondered, but he wasn't totally sure. So we go in, and this is the very end of the session. And this session went long because I wanted it to end this way. But they go in, they have a servant who takes them up to this room, and I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm going to open the door, of course. I'm like, okay, you open the door. So Anna actually is the one that opened the door because she wanted to protect him in case anything came flying out of the room. Right. So she opens the door and takes a step to the side, and as standing there, and the person on the other side of the door in the room is sitting, and what she says to him was, "Oh, my dear sweet boy." And that was the end of the session. Oh. Weston lost his damn mind.
Brutal. You
but
both
then the next
are
session,
awful.
We're so bad. But the next session was where it was really bad, because then it comes out that she didn't want him to be taken. He was actually taken from her hours after his birth. She always wanted him. She kept track of him the whole time. She actually had an inheritance waiting for him. And the only reason she was able to do this is his father had died. So the chains that had been shackling her to Cheliax and this horrible lifestyle was now gone.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the session that I almost got him to cry.
That hit you again. Actually, because I realized I didn't ask, and if I don't know what that session after the entire party was down, how did he loop that around to also keep your relationship intact?
Well, we didn't die. Okay. So I was good.
I assume that.
We woke up in chains with gags and hoods, and we had been kidnapped by the same organization that those robbers had been from. Okay. And because of their unique skill set, they were actually being brought in to help this group called the Nightwing. But Angela, oh my gosh, I'm writing a novel right now who the main character is Angela, so my brain. But Anna has a mouth on her, pretty intense, like. Earlier in the campaign, she mouthed off to a Lich King and he stole her voice for a little while. She doesn't learn. So she mouths off to this gang leader who had just gutted someone because she's like, well, you need us. Like, you need to understand, you need us. That's the only reason that you, and Weston's sitting there like, if I push this and if she keeps pushing this, I'm gonna have to kill her.
Right.
Like legitimate. And he was genuinely concerned because he's like, if she doesn't figure it out, she's about to die. And I'm really going to have to kill my wife and make my character bring her back to life. Like, this is not going to be good. Thankfully, like, I kind of started backing off. I could kind of see the telltale signs. But when we finished that session, he was like, I legitimately was going to have to kill you again. Like, really kill you this time. Like, I'm so glad you backed off. So we know each other really well, though. So It's like we know how to push each other. But I honestly would be okay with a death scene for Anna's character at the end. Like when we're ready to wrap everything up. But
I'm sure everyone is hoping you don't die, but that's obviously, yeah, you don't have to pick up midway, but
no, but that would, I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I mean, I'm a dramatic soprano, and that's not just a character trait, that's a vocal type, but beautiful. We like dying.
So this was a lot of fun. This was like really cool. I was really like, I love how apparently I'm not the only psychopath that got addicted to D&D. That got addicted to D&D in less than a year and was like, I have to share this with the world. Despite, you know, I want to definitely like, I'm gonna throw you into my community. I want to hear from people, you know, because I think that's what I love most about this show and these games is like the bonds you build and like the fun that is shared amongst people. Why don't you roll through all of your things where people can find you and such?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am half of Party of Two RPG. We have a Twitch stream. We stream on Mondays for Tabletop Train Talks, where we talk about tabletop gaming, train, and other nerdy stuff. And then on Friday nights, we do our persistent campaign, The Scions. And it is at twitch.tv/Party of Two RPG. You can also find us on Twitter, which at the handle Party of Two RPG Live, and then my personal Twitter, which is the one that I'm on the most, and that I am a little obsessed with, is Hayley _Bell. It's HAYLEYM, like Mary _Bell.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And for me, thanks everyone for listening. You can find me at Tom DeSillis Comedy on Instagram, T DeSillis Comedy on Twitter, which is where I tend to be more active as far as tweeting out when we go live on this show. The music for my intro was created by Michael James McGarry. You can follow him at It's MJ Music, or It's MJ Made on Instagram and SoundCloud. And the logo for my show was created by Nicole Summers from the Reliably Chaotic podcast, which is another, that one's audio, but it is wonderful. One of my favorites. And once again, if you want to be on the show, you just shoot me an email at youhadtobethere@dndpodcast@gmail.com, or shoot me a DM on Twitter. Either one of those works. But thanks again for listening. This has been You Had to Be There with Hayley Bell. Bye, everyone.